Okay, hello Cloud Gurus and welcome to this lecture. This lecture is on CloudWatch. Now, CloudWatch comes up surprisingly a lot in the Certified Solutions Architect Associate exam. Used to be more sort of geared towards the SysOps Administrator Associate, and it still does feature extremely heavily in that as well. But it does come up in the Certified Solutions Architect Associate exam, and it is definitely worth 3 or 4 marks. So let's learn what CloudWatch is. So what is AWS CloudWatch? Well, CloudWatch is a monitoring service to monitor your AWS resources as well as the applications that you run in AWS. So CloudWatch basically monitors performance. Whenever you hear the word CloudWatch, I want you to think of someone at the gym. So it's all about performance monitoring. And CloudWatch can monitor things like compute. So inside compute, it can monitor things like our EC2 instances. It can monitor auto-scaling groups, elastic load balancers, Route 53 health checks. Now, I know we haven't covered these off yet. Don't worry, we are going to cover them off in the next sections of the course. But CloudWatch can basically go through and not just monitor the EC2 instances, it can monitor a whole bunch of other things as well. It can monitor storage and content delivery, and you know all these services. So it can monitor our EBS volumes. We can monitor, how busy the volumes are. We can monitor storage gateways, and we can monitor CloudFront using CloudWatch as well. So that's all CloudWatch is. It's a monitoring tool. And like I said, I want you to think of performance monitoring. Now, CloudWatch with EC2, this is always a popular exam topic, whether in the Solutions Architect Associate exam or whether in the SysOps Administrator Associate exam. But essentially, CloudWatch can monitor at a host level metrics such as CPU. It can monitor our network. It can monitor our disk. And it can do a status check, and it can monitor things like the underlying hypervisor, whether or not that is running, and then it can also monitor the underlying EC2 instance. And we'll have a look at that in the lab coming up in the next lecture. So what Amazon like to do is they like to try and confuse you, and they like to try and confuse you with CloudTrail. And they always have these questions where you'll be asked, given a particular scenario, and then you'll be asked whether you should be using CloudWatch or CloudTrail. And so CloudTrail basically is a CCTV for your AWS environment. It increases the visibility into your users and resource activity by recording AWS Management Console actions and API calls. So every time you go in and create a S3 bucket or an EC2 instance, you're basically making an API call to AWS. And this is all recorded using CloudTrail. And you can actually go in and identify which users and accounts called AWS, the source IP address from which these calls were made, and when the calls were made. So that's what CloudTrail is. So every time you see CloudTrail, I want you to imagine a big CCTV camera. Whenever you see CloudWatch, I want you to imagine performance. So CloudWatch monitors performance, CloudTrail monitors API calls in the AWS platform. So just remember going into your exam that CloudWatch is used for monitoring performance. CloudWatch can monitor most of AWS as well as your applications that run on AWS. CloudWatch with EC2 will monitor events every 5 minutes by default, but you can also have detailed monitoring turned on, and that will give you 1-minute intervals. And we'll look at how to do that in the next lab. You can also create CloudWatch alarms, which trigger notifications. And we did that when we created a billing alarm. That was essentially creating a CloudWatch alarm for our billing. We're going to do that in the next lab as well, but we're going to create some EC2 performance alerts. And then CloudWatch is all about performance, whereas CloudTrail is about auditing. And I cannot stress that enough. If you see a scenario-based question that's asking who's provisioning what resource in AWS, such as S3 or EC2, that's always going to be CloudTrail. If it's asking you what the network throughput is or the disk I/O on your EC2 instance, that's going to be CloudWatch. So just remember, CloudWatch is about performance. Just think of going to the gym, whereas CloudTrail is all about auditing. Think of some, big CCTV camera or someone with like a little sort of detective magnifying glass. So that is it for this lecture, guys. The best way to learn anything in AWS is to get our hands dirty with it. So in the next lecture, we're going to go ahead and go in and provision an EC2 instance with CloudWatch detailed monitoring turned on. And then we're going to go in and start stressing that EC2 instance and see what happens. So if you've got the time, please join me in the next lecture. Thank you.